The truck rattled to a stop at the end of a dirt road that stretched like a scar through the parched land. Heat pressed down heavy, the kind that made your shirt stick before you even stepped out. Dust coated my throat already, gritty and unrelenting. I wiped my forehead with the back of my hand, squinting at the ranch house ahead. Faded wood, sagging porch, horses milling in the corral like they knew something I didn't. That's when I saw her. From the shadows of the porch, the owner's daughter watched me unload my bag. Tall, lean, with dark hair pulled back tight, her eyes steady, unblinking. A pull hit me low in the gut, sharp and unexpected, mixed with the wariness of being this far from anywhere. I needed this job bad. Tuition loomed like a storm cloud, debts piling from city life I couldn't afford anymore. But the ranch felt off from the start. Air thick with unspoken weight, like secrets hung in the dry wind. The father met me at the gate, his handshake rough as sandpaper, calluses from years of gripping reins and hammers. "You the one from the ad?" he grunted, eyes narrowing under the brim of his hat. I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "That's me, here for the summer work." He sized me up quick, boots scuffed from city sidewalks, arms not yet marked by real labor, and waved me toward the barn. "Start now, no time for talk. Muck stalls, feed the stock, earn your keep or hit the road." His words landed like commands, no room for questions. I followed him inside, the air shifting from dry heat to something thicker, laced with hay and manure. The barn loomed tall, beams creaking under the weight of time, horses nickering, soft in their stalls. First chore hit hard. Shovel in hand, I attacked the stalls, the pitchfork scraping against wood as I hauled out wet straw and clumps of waste. Sweat beaded fast, trickling down my back, mixing with the dust until my skin felt like cracked earth. My muscles burned after the first hour. City jobs never prepared you for this. The endless lift and toss, the way the shovel bit into the ground like it fought back. But there was something in it, a rhythm that settled my nerves. Each load dumped outside built something in me, resilience from the ache, proof I could handle the isolation. The sun slanted through the slats, turning motes of dust golden, and I paused once to gulp water from a dented canteen, throat raw. She appeared then, quiet as a shadow lengthening. I didn't hear her boots on the dirt floor, just felt the shift in the air, cooler where she stood. "Like this," she said, voice low and even, nodding at the pitchfork in my grip. Her hands demonstrated. Quick twist, leverage from the hips. Not touching, but close enough I caught the faint scent of leather and soap. I watched her fingers, strong and sure, nails short and dirt-rimmed. She didn't linger, just turned back to the tack room. But her posture stuck with me. Shoulders tight, like carrying more than the day's work, a family weight pressing down unseen. Was it the ranch? The way her father barked orders without looking at her? Or something deeper, etched in the lines around her eyes? By midday, exhaustion pulled at me. But so did the spark. Wiping sweat from my brow, I caught myself glancing her way as she saddled a horse outside. Movements fluid, unhurried. Her shirt clung slight in the heat, revealing the quiet strength in her arms. The way she handled the horse with a gentleness that contrasted her father's gruffness. Attraction flickered amid the fatigue. Unwelcome but insistent. A warmth unrelated to the sun. I shook it off, focusing on the next stall, the shovel's weight grounding me. This was a job, nothing more. Tuition waited back east, a life beyond this dust. But her presence lingered, a question in the air I couldn't voice. Evening came slow, the sky bruising purple as I finished hauling the last load. My hands blistered, body heavy, but the father clapped my shoulder once. Approval, rough as his voice. Not bad for a starter. Dinner's at the house. Eat, then bunk in the loft. I hesitated, but hunger won. The invitation felt like more than food, a hint at threads weaving me deeper into this place. As I washed up at the pump, cold water shocking my skin, I wondered about her. Would she be there, silent across the table? The pull tugged again, wariness mixing with curiosity. The ranch's secrets hummed faint, but for now, I stepped toward the house, the screen door creaking open like an unspoken welcome. Days blurred into a rhythm of dust and sweat. Morning started before dawn, the sky still bruised when I hauled feed buckets to the corral. Horses pressed against the rails, their breath warm against my arms as I measured oats and hay. The weight pulled at my shoulders, grain spilling like secrets into the troughs. Then came the fences, barbed wire sagging under the wind's pull, posts leaning like tired men. I drove staples with a hammer, the clang echoing across the empty fields, each strike jarring up my arm. Shared spaces forced us close. She'd appear at the far end of the line, testing knots or hauling rails, her boots kicking up the same red dirt that caked mine. Proximity felt like the heat, unavoidable, pressing in. Her name came out one afternoon, mid-chore. I was wrestling a loose post back into place when she handed me a shovel without a word. "Clara," she said, as if the tool needed explanation. Her voice cut through the wind, simple, no fanfare. I nodded, digging the hole deeper. "Thanks." From there, talk trickled in, casual as water from a cracked pipe. Over lunch under the cottonwood, she'd mention ranch history. The great flood that washed out half the pastures, the drought that killed the old herd. Stories of her grandfather breaking mustangs by hand, the land holding grudges longer than people. But the future? She skirted it like a bad fence line. Eyes on her plate, fork scraping tin. "Things stay the same out here," she'd say, and leave it there. I started noticing the details that stuck. Her hands, calloused thick from reins and ropes, veins standing out like rivers on a map. Quiet strength in how she lifted a saddle. Easy, no strain showing. Fleeting smiles when a horse nuzzled her palm, gone quick as a shadow. One morning, feeding the mare in the end stall, our fingers brushed over the bucket handle. Rough skin against rough, a spark jumping silent. I pulled back first, heart thudding uneven, but her gaze lingered a beat too long. Later, repairing the north fence, I caught her watching from the rise. Eyes steady, not judging, just seeing. The air between us thickened then, like before a rain. Attraction built slow, a fire banked under ash. Accidental touches multiplied, her arm grazing mine as we passed tools in the tack room, the brief heat of it lingering on my skin. Lingering gazes when she thought I wasn't looking. Me wiping sweat from my neck, her pausing mid-stride. Nights in the loft, the straw mattress scratching, I'd replay them. The curve of her jaw in the lantern light, the way her laugh broke low during supper, rare but real. Body woke to it, restless in the dark. But I pushed it down hard. This job was my anchor, paycheck for tuition, escape from the city's grind. Feelings? They were loose wire, ready to snag and tear everything apart. Focus on the work, on the fences holding, the horses fed, on keeping distance in a place that shrank it daily. Weeks ground on, the routine wearing grooves, mornings feeding turned to afternoons mending, evenings checking gates under stars pricking the black. Claire's presence wove in tighter, her shadow crossing mine at the pump, water splashing our boots. Talk deep and slight, edges of personal slipping through. She asked once about the city, why I left. "Noise got too loud," I said, pumping the handle. She nodded, eyes on the horizon. "Out here, silence has its own weight." No more than that. But the pull grew, a current under calm water. I caught myself seeking her out, lingering near the barn when chores ended. Job security demanded I stay sharp, uninvolved. Yet every glance chipped at that wall, desire flickering brighter. One evening, clouds boiled up from the west, sky turning slate. Wind whipped the corral, horses stamping uneasy. I finished the last fence check as thunder grumbled low. Clara called from the barn door, voice carrying sharp. "Get the tools in, storm's coming fast." We moved quick, hauling hammers and wire into the dim interior. Rain hit sudden, sheets slamming the roof like fists. Lightning cracked, thunder rolling close. The barn doors rattled, but we barred them tight. Inside, the air cooled sharp, hay scent mixing with wet earth. Horses shifted restless in stalls. We stood there, breathing heavy from the rush, water dripping from our hats. She leaned against a post, wiping her face with her sleeve. "Close one." I nodded, heart still racing from the wind. Silence settled, thicker now with the storm raging outside. Our eyes met in the low light, something shifting. Vulnerability crept in, the isolation pressing us closer. "Ever been caught like this before?" she asked, voice softer. I shook my head. Conversation turned then, personal edges fraying. Stories of storms past, fears unspoken in the downpour's roar. Rain hammered the tin roof like 1,000 hooves. We huddled against the barn wall, backs to the rough wood, the air thick with damp hay and the sharp tang of ozone. Lightning flashed through the cracks, painting her face in stark white, shadows pooling under her eyes. Clara shifted closer, our shoulders brushing, the heat of her cutting through the chill. Horses stamped in their stalls, restless, but the storm held us pinned. "Storms like this," she said, voice low over the roar. "They strip everything bare." I nodded, knees drawn up, the floorboards cold under me. Talk came slow at first, words pulled out by the thunder's rhythm. She spoke of childhood here, summers chasing calves through the dust, her mother teaching her to braid manes with wildflowers. "She'd laugh when the wind took them," Clara said, eyes distant. "Said the land gives and takes in equal measure." Vulnerability cracked through then, her voice softening on the edges. I shared bits of my own, city summers dodging traffic, the ache of empty pockets driving me west. The barn felt smaller, the storm a wall sealing us in. Her knee pressed mine, accidental, stayed there. I didn't move, but when I asked about now, her guard snapped up. "Family debts," she murmured, tracing a splinter in the wood. "Ranch struggles. Always have." Hints dropped like loose stones, late feed bills, fences falling faster than they could mend, but no details, no why. She deflected with a story of her first foal, born under a similar gale, eyes flicking away, jaw tight. The weight hung unspoken, a shadow over her words. I wanted to push, but the rain's fury mirrored her walls. Instead, I let silence settle, broken only by the creak of beams. Thunder rolled closer, and a sharp whinny cut through. The old gray in the corner stall kicked, leg caught awkward in the straw. "Damn," Clara muttered, scrambling up. I followed, heart quickening. The horse thrashed, eyes wide with pain, a gash from the kick blooming red on its flank. We moved together, her leading. "Hold his head," she said, voice steady but urgent. I gripped the halter, murmuring soft, the horse's breath hot and ragged against my palm. Clara knelt, cleaning the wound with a rag from her pocket, water from the bucket mixing pink. Her hands worked fast, but the horse bucked once, hard. She steadied, reaching for the salve on the shelf. Our fingers overlapped then, slick with rain and blood, pressing the jar between us. Electricity jolted, sharp as the lightning outside. Time slowed. Her skin warm, calluses rough against mine, eyes locking in the dim. Pulse thudded in my ears, louder than the storm. She didn't pull away first. The air charged, heavy with more than thunder. The horse calmed under our touch, but the spark lingered, humming low. Back against the wall, storm easing to a patter, isolation amplified it all. Out here, miles from town, desire built unchecked, a fire fed by the quiet. Her nearness pressed like the damp air, tempting lines I knew better than to cross. Job first, tuition, escape. But fear twisted in. What if this pull tangled everything? What if she felt it too, and it broke us both? I watched her profile, rain dripping from her hair, the curve of her neck shadowed. Body betrayed me, leaning closer without thought. Days after, town gossip seeped in like creek water after flood. I drove to the feed store, dust still caking my boots, and caught whispers at the counter. "Ranch is done," the clerk said to another, voices low. "Debts piling, land up for sale." Eyes flicked my way, judging. Girls carrying it all, poor thing. Back at the ranch, her father's cough echoed harsher. Bent over the kitchen table, face gray. He waved me off when I offered help, but Clara's worry etched deeper, lines around her mouth. Health failing, ranch teetering, pressure mounted, invisible ropes tightening. Repair started at dawn, post-storm chaos everywhere. Fences down in the north pasture, wire tangled like veins. We worked side by side, hammers swinging in sync, sweat cutting trails through the mud on our faces. Late nights stretched, lanterns flickering as we mended roofs, patched stalls. Boundaries blurred in the exhaustion, her hand steadying my ladder, breath close when passing tools. Laughter slipped in once, over a snapped board, her grin flashing brief. The secret loomed, unspoken, but the space between us shrank, heat building under the work's weight. Moonlight sliced through the clouds, turning the north fence a silver tangle. We worked late, hammers thudding soft in the night, the air cooling to a bite that raised goose flesh under my shirt. Clara drove a post deeper, her breath visible in puffs. I held the wire taut, muscles straining, when the staple gun slipped from my grip. It clattered into the dirt, and I cursed low. She paused, then let out a laugh, short, real, cutting the quiet like a knife through rope. "Happens to the best," she said, retrieving it. Her fingers brushed mine, handing it back, warm despite the chill. I grinned, despite myself, the sound easing something tight in my chest. First real trust flickered there, in the shared mishap, no judgment in her eyes. We kept at it, mending the line, under stars, pricking the black. Another slip, my boot caught a root, nearly toppling me into the wire. She steadied my arm, grip firm on my elbow. Laughter bubbled again, hers deeper this time, pulling mine along. "Steady as a colt," she teased, voice light. The weight of the day lifted slight, trust building in the rhythm of our swings, the way she'd anticipate my reach for the next staple. No words needed, just the night, the work, her nearness, solid as the posts we set. Dawn crept in gray before we finished, backs aching, hands raw from the cold metal. I wiped mud from my jeans, catching her silhouette against the paling sky. Something shifted then, easier between us, like the fence holding straighter. Days later, clues to her secret surfaced sharp. I lingered in the barn after chores, stacking hay bales, when voices carried from the house. Clara's tone rose-edged, phone pressed to her ear. "No, we can't wait. The land, it's all we have." A pause, her boots scraping the floorboards. "Selling now means losing everything." Distress cracked through, raw as a snapped rein. I froze behind the door, heart thudding. Selling the land? The ranch's heart ripped out? She hung up abrupt, chair scraping as she paced. I slipped out quiet, but the words stuck, heavy as wet earth. Her face carried it after. Eyes shadowed, jaw set tighter during lunch. She pushed beans around her plate, fork scraping tin. I wanted to ask, but held back. The gossip from town echoed now, whispers of debts swallowing the place whole. Clara's burden pressed visible, weighing her steps as she checked the herd. Evenings brought shared meals, the kitchen lit soft by lantern glow. Father's cough echoed faint from his room, leaving us alone at the table. We'd passed the bread, elbows close on the scarred wood. One night, her knee brushed mine under the table. Accidental at first, denim against denim. It stayed, warm pressure building slow. Unspoken heat simmered, air thickening like before a summer squall. I shifted once, testing, and it pressed firmer. Her eyes met mine over the rim of her glass, steady, no pull away. Pulse quickened low, body waking to the contact, simple but charged. Attraction intensified in those small spaces. After supper, clearing plates side by side at the sink, her hip grazed mine. Water ran hot over our hands, steam rising, her scent of soap and earth close. I dried a dish slow, watching suds slide down her wrist. The pull tugged harder, a current I couldn't ignore. Nights in the loft, straw scratching my back, I'd trace the memory. Her knees' warmth, the way her breath hitched slight when our gazes locked. Desire coiled tight, rural quiet amplifying it. no city noise to drown the want. My body betrayed caution daily. Mornings, feeding the horses, I'd catch myself lingering near her stall, craving the nearness like water after dust. Craved the brush of her arm passing buckets, the low timbre of her voice calling a horse's name. Focus frayed, shovel slipping mid-muck, mind wandering to the curve of her neck bent over tack. This job demanded steady hands, tuition riding on it. But she pulled like gravity, body leaning without thought, heart thudding uneven at her shadow crossing mine. I pushed it down, but the craving built, insistent as thirst. One afternoon, hauling water to the trough, I tested the edge. Ranch seems solid, I said light, pouring slow. Future look the same? She stiffened, bucket handle creaking in her grip. Always does out here. Deflection came quick, eyes on the horizon. Land doesn't change easy. No more, her smile forced as she turned to the pump. I let it drop, but the question hung. Her secret a fence between us, barbed and unseen. Pressure mounted as days heated. Father's step slowed, cough rattling deeper, bending him over the porch rail. Clara's worry etched lines, her hands trembling slight when she thought I didn't see. Town eyes pried harder, neighbors driving slow past the gate, murmurs of sail rippling like wind through dry grass. Conservative weight pressed, whispers of that new hand, mixing with ranch talk, judgment thick as dust. Stakes rose, our stolen moments fragile under it all. Then it broke. Evening chores done, I headed to the house when a thud echoed from inside. Clara's shout cut sharp. "Dad!" I ran, door banging open. He lay slumped at the table, face ashen, breath shallow. She knelt beside him, hands pressing his chest, eyes wide with fear. "Call the doc," she snapped, voice cracking. I grabbed the phone, dialing frantic, the line buzzing endless. He stirred weak, but the collapse hit like a storm's core. Ranch teetering, family fracturing. She confided, partial then, after the doc left with promises of rest. We sat on the porch steps, night cooling around us, her voice low. Debts are choking us. Banks circling the land. No full reveal, but the pull tightened, her hand finding mine in the dark, squeezing once. Trust cracked wider, drawing us closer amid the ruin. Father's collapse left the ranch quieter, like the land holding its breath. Clara moved through days on edges, eyes hollowed by nights at his bedside. She'd bring him broth, spoon it slow while he grumbled weak protests, her hands steady, but knuckles white. Exhaustion clung to her like dust after wind, shoulders sagging under the weight, steps dragging across the porch. Mornings, I'd find her asleep in the chair by his door, head lolled, dark hair spilling loose. "Go rest," I'd say, soft, touching her arm light. She shook it off, but the offer hung there, a thread pulling us tighter. I stepped in where I could, quiet support weaving through the grind. While she sat with him, I'd muck the stalls deeper, feed the horses extra oats to keep their coats gleaming. Evenings, when his breathing evened out, I'd brew coffee strong, set a mug by her elbow, without words. She took it once, fingers brushing mine, the warmth lingering longer than the steam. "Thanks," she murmured, voice frayed. Moments like that built slow, me hauling water to his room, her catching my eye across the kitchen. Gratitude unspoken, but heavy. The ranch felt smaller, our roles blurring in the caretaking, her vulnerability cracking the walls she'd built high. Pushing for more honesty came natural, but it failed sharp. One afternoon, after settling him for his nap, I found her at the sink, scrubbing a pot raw. Water splashed her wrists, suds foaming white. "The bank's not just circling," I said, leaning on the counter. "What's the full play? Selling?" Her shoulders tensed, sponge stilling. She turned slow, eyes narrowing like a horse scenting danger. "It's not your load to carry." I pressed gentle. "We're in this dust together now." But she pulled back hard, setting the pot down with a thud that echoed like a slammed gate. "Some things stay buried. Drop it." The door swung behind her as she left, silence thick as churned mud. Trust frayed there, my questions like barbs snagging what we'd mended. Physical pull escalated, despite the rift. Next morning, she saddled the bay for a pasture check, movements clipped, still carrying the night before. "Ride with," she said, not asking. I swung up behind, the saddle creaking under us. Her hand guided mine to the reins, fingers overlapping firm, calluses rough, pulse steady under my palm. The horse stepped out, rhythm jolting us close, her back warm against my chest. Breath mingled hot in the rise and fall, her hair brushing my cheek, scent of sweat and leather sharp. Wind whipped the fields, but the space between us shrank, heat building like sun on dry rock. She didn't pull away, reins taut in our joined grip. Heart hammered, desire coiling low, the ride stretching endless. Turmoil churned after, heart tangled in what-ifs. Back at the barn, unsaddling in silence, the air hung heavy, thick with unspoken pulls. What if I pushed too far and she shut down for good? What if the ranch folded and took her with it, leaving me grasping dust? Feelings trapped like a colt in a box stall, pacing, kicking at walls that wouldn't give. Rural quiet amplified it, nights in the loft staring at beams, mind racing like a spooked herd. Her secret loomed like a storm fence, barbed wire twisting my gut. Body craved her touch, the guide of her hand, but caution whispered retreat. Silence between us grew weighted, every glance a question unanswered, desire and doubt roping tight. Neighbor's eyes pried sharper now, conservative weight pressing like a brand. Old Man Hargrove rode by slow one dawn, hat tipped low, gaze lingering on us mending the east line. "Heard about the old-timer," he called, voice carrying sly. "And the new hand sticking close." Clara stiffened beside me, hammer pausing mid-swing. Town talk rippled out. Feed store whispers of that girl from the city, too friendly with the daughter. Judgment hung thick, rural code unyielding. Women like us didn't cross lines under watching eyes. Stakes heightened, gossip a noose tightening. Father's recovery slowed under it, his glares sharper when I passed his door. Clara withdrew slight, our moments stolen in shadows, fear of exposure fueling the fire even as it threatened to smother. Heat wave rolled in days later, air shimmering like a fever dream. Father stable enough for bed rest, the house emptied early, him dozing, us driven to the line shack for fence checks. Cabin sat remote, walls weathered, a single room with bunks and a stove. Dust swirled as we stepped in, door banging shut against the blaze outside. Sweat beaded instant, shirts clinging. "Too damn hot," she muttered, dropping her pack. We collapsed on the bunks, space between narrow, breath sinking in the stifling quiet. Confessions bubbled up then, words spilling like water from a cracked jug, the isolation cracking her guard wide. Heat pressed in like a fever, the cabin's walls trapping it close. Sweat trickled down my spine, shirt plastered to skin, as we sat on the bunks, air thick enough to chew. Clara's breath came uneven, her fingers twisting the hem of her sleeve. The stove sat cold, but the day's blaze lingered, turning the room into a box. Outside, wind rattled the shutters, dry and insistent, like the land demanding answers. She shifted, bunk creaking under her weight, eyes fixed on the floorboard scarred by years of boots. "It's over," she said finally, voice cracking like split wood. Words spilled then, raw and unstopped. The ranch was going under, debts piled from droughts, vet bills, the bank's noose tightening year by year. Her father had signed papers months back, hidden in desk drawers, the land carved up for developers. Town creeping in, houses on the horizon where pastures stretched. "I was gonna leave," she whispered, hands clenching. "Head west, start clean. No more fighting ghosts." Her plan laid bare, escape mapped in her eyes, the secret she'd carried like a stone in her boot. Anger hit me sharp, twisting in my gut like barbed wire. All the hints, the deflections, the weight she'd shouldered alone. Deception stung hot, mixing with the raw pull that had drawn me here. "You let me dig in," I said, voice rising over the wind. "Fences, stalls, everything. Knowing it'd end?" She stood, pacing the narrow space, dust kicking up under her steps. Her face flushed, not just from heat, but the truth ripping free. Attraction burned under it, her nearness a flame I couldn't douse. Jaw set, hair sticking to her neck, the strength in her stride that had hooked me from the porch shadows. We circled each other, words flying like sparks from flint. "I didn't ask you to stay," she shot back, stopping close, breath brushing my face. "This place eats people. I was sparing you." Sparing? The lie tasted bitter. I'd poured sweat into this dirt, body aching for her in the quiet, and she'd planned to vanish without a word. Rage boiled, but so did want. Her eyes flashing, chest rising fast, the scent of her skin sharp in the close air. I stepped in, hands fisting at my sides. "You think I came for the pay? It's you. Always was." Her gaze softened a beat, then hardened again, the fight pulling us tighter. Breaking point came sudden. She grabbed my arm, grip fierce, pulling me against the wall. Dust sifted from the rafters, coating our shoulders like ash. "Damn you," she muttered, voice breaking. Tears tracked down her cheeks, mixing with sweat, and anger shattered into something raw. Our mouths crashed then, desperate, her lips salt and heat against mine. I clutched her shirt, fingers digging into fabric, the kiss bruising amid the tears and grit. Her hand slid to my waist, pressing hard, bodies aligning like puzzle pieces forced together. Wind howled outside, but inside the world narrowed to her. Tongue tracing mine, a gasp escaping as I tugged her closer. Dust swirled around us, the cabin shaking, but we held, the first real touch igniting everything banked. We broke apart gasping, foreheads pressed, her tears wetting my skin. Realization sank in slow, heavy as a fallen beam. This love, it threatened her escape, chained her to the land she'd flee. The ranch's end mirrored us, fragile as cracked leather, ready to snap under pressure. Her plan crumbled in that kiss, the pull of me as binding as the debts. "I can't leave now," she whispered, voice trembling. "Not like this." But fear laced it. What if the bank won, tore the heart out? What if we broke under the weight? Body still hummed from her touch, desire coiling deep. But doubt crept in, cold as night air seeping through cracks. Consequences loomed immediate, shadows lengthening. Back at the house by midnight, Father's light burned in his window. He waited on the porch, cough rattling as we approached, eyes sharp under the lantern. "Where the hell?" he barked, gaze flicking between us, disheveled, close. He saw it, the shift, the dust on our clothes. Disapproval carved deeper lines in his face, a grunt dismissing us to our bunks. No words, but the weight settled, his silence a judgment heavier than shouts. Town's eyes would follow, gossip already buzzing like flies on carrion, conservative tongues wagging over that city girl and the daughter. Judgment intensified, whispers turning to stares at the feed store, neighbors slowing trucks at the gate. Stakes spiked, our secret now layered on the ranches, exposure a blade waiting to fall. Morning light filtered gray through the cabin window, pulling me from shallow sleep. Clara stirred beside me on the bunk, arm draped heavy across my waist. First night we'd shared the space, bodies tangled in exhaustion after the storm of words and touch. Heat lingered, but dawn brought clarity, decision point forcing choices. The ranch teetered, papers waiting in town, her escape plan dust now. We sat up slow, hands linking automatic, the air between us charged with what came next. Fight the sale? Run together? The land stretched outside, indifferent, demanding we choose before it chose for us. Sun cut through the cabin's grimy window, pulling shadows long across the bunk. Claire's arm stayed heavy over me, her breath steady against my shoulder. The heat of her skin a quiet anchor in the morning chill. I shifted, slow, not wanting to break it, but reality pressed in like the dry wind outside. Papers waited in town, the bank's ink drying on the sail. Her plan to leave, to slip west like a shadow at dusk, hung shattered between us. But the kiss from last night bound us tighter than any rope. Trust had cracked wide, but rebuilding meant facing the dirt we'd stirred up. "We fight it," I said, voice rough from sleep, turning to meet her eyes. They held mine, dark and searching, no deflection left. She nodded once, deliberate, her hand squeezing my waist before pulling away. "Together, then." Words simple, but they carried the weight of fences we'd mend, not just wire, but the gaps between us. We rose, boots scraping the floorboards, and stepped out into the blaze. Air shimmered over the pastures, horses grazing distant, oblivious. Back at the ranch by noon, we mapped it rough over coffee at the scarred table, father dozing in his room, the house quiet save for the tick of the old clock. "Appeal to legacy," she said, tracing a line on a crumpled map with her finger. "Grandfather's deed, buried in the attic. Clauses about family hold, debts tied to the land's blood. Bank can't just carve it up," she murmured, eyes fierce. "Not without a stand." I added what I knew from city scraps. Loans, appeals, ways to stall the sale. Joint plan took shape, not grand, but solid, like posts driven deep. Trust rebuilt in those hours, her leaning close to point at boundaries, our knees brushing intentional now. No accident in the contact. Labor shifted after that, purpose threading through the grind. Mornings, we'd ride the lines together, checking for weak spots, but touches turned deliberate. Her hand on my thigh steadying during a trot, fingers lingering warm through denim. Afternoons mending the south fence, sweat cutting trails down our necks. She'd pass the hammer with a graze of knuckles, eyes locking brief but loaded. Shared work felt charged, every swing of the mallet sinking our breaths, bodies moving in rhythm like we'd always known it. Evenings in the barn, rubbing down horses side by side, her shoulder pressing mine as we curried manes, the brushstrokes mirroring the slow pull between us. Bond deepened, no longer stolen but claimed, her laugh breaking low when I fumbled a knot, my hand finding the small of her back to steady us both. Vulnerability showed in the quiet after, her head resting on my shoulder once, watching the sunset bleed red over the ridges, the ranch's future uncertain, but ours woven tighter. Obstacles rose sharp, demanding we face them head on. Father woke stronger by week's end, cough easing to a rasp, but his eyes sharpened when we entered his room together, Clara carrying a tray, me trailing with fresh linens. He sat propped, face lined deep, gaze flicking between us like he scented the shift. "What's this?" he grunted, fork pausing midair. Clara set the plate down firm. "We're fighting the sale. Legacy's ours. Grandfather's words in the deed." I stood beside her, hand brushing hers hidden by the bedframe. He coughed, eyes narrowing on the touch he couldn't see, but felt. "Fool talk. Bank's got the papers." Confrontation hung thick, his voice gravel. But she held ground, voice steady as rain leather. "Not without us saying no. You taught me that." Silence stretched, his jaw working. Then a nod, reluctant, the weight of years cracking slight. Disapproval lingered in his grunt, but he didn't push. Health too frail, or maybe seeing the fire we'd kindled. We left him with the map, his finger tracing old boundaries, a quiet alliance forming in the room's dim. Town gossip clawed harder, conservative eyes turning the dirt roads into tight ropes. At the feed store next run, whispers hit like wind through cracks. Hargrove leaning on the counter, voice carrying sly. "Heard the ranch girls got company now. City hand sticking too close." Eyes slid our way, judgment thick as the sacks of grain. Rural code unyielding on women crossing lines. Clara's grip tightened on the bag she hauled, but she met it with defiance quiet as dawn. Chin up, no flinch, loading the truck without a word back. Neighbors slowed at the gate after, trucks idling, stares lingering on us working the corral. Her hand on my arm guiding a horse, mine steadying her waist. We navigated it with shared glances, touches hidden but bold, fingers linking brief behind the barn, breaths mingling in the tack room's shadow. Defiance built resilience, the pressure forging us closer, no longer shrinking, but standing tall in the dust. Emotional threads pulled taut, acceptance settling like dew on cooled earth. Slow burn reached its core one evening, after corralling the herd under a sky bruising purple. We stepped into the barn, lanterns flickering low, horses settled soft in stalls. Dust motes danced in the glow, her silhouette sharp against the beams. "This," she said, turning to me, voice low. "You and the ranch. It's what I want now." No grand words, but her hands found mine, pulling me close. The commitment in the press of her body. I cupped her face, thumbs tracing jawline rough from wind, and kissed her, slow, deliberate, tongues meeting like old friends. Heat built unhurried, her fingers threading my hair, pulling me down to the hay-strewn floor. We moved together, clothes shedding like worn skins, her skin hot under my palms, breaths ragged in the quiet. She arched at my touch, gasp breaking the hush, our bodies aligning deep, rhythm building like a gathering storm. No rush, just the culmination. Her name on my lips, mine whispered back, vulnerability bare as the land outside. Afterward, tangled in the dim, her head on my chest, acceptance washed through. Feelings no longer fought but held, the slow fire now a steady flame. Agreement came next on, over the kitchen table with father joining weak but present. "We stay," Clara said, map spread wide. "Revive it. Sell off edge lots maybe, but core holds. Crops in the flats, more hands, come fall." I nodded, adding bits from my city know-how. Online sales for hay, grants for old ranches. Future stretched uncertain, bank's shadow long, but planned now, tangible as the deed we'd dig up. Father grunted approval, eyes softer on us, the family knot retied. Open-ended, yes, storms would come, debts linger, but together, the path forward clear, boots planted in this dirt. Reflections settled in the weeks after, gratitude threading the days like rain stitches. I'd come for pay, tuition's chain pulling me west, but found more. An unexpected path winding through dust and desire. Clara's hand in mine during fence walks, her laugh echoing in the corral. Resilience born from the vulnerability we'd shared. Out here, silence held truths louder than shouts, the land teaching us to bend without breaking. Body and heart synced now, no wariness left, just the quiet strength of two women claiming their ground. The ranch breathed easier, horses stronger, future a horizon we chased side by side. Cabin door swung wide to a dawn-streaked gold, our hands clasped tight, determination rooting us like fence posts in this hard-won earth. If this quiet pull between us resonates with your own hidden paths, share your truths in the comments below. Subscribe for more stories of women finding strength in the unspoken, where desire carves its way through the dust.